Well, you might have heard Michigan recently passed legislation regulating ride-sharing companies like Lyft and Uber, but there are still a number of legal issues out there. In this week's Know the Law segment, Tom Sinas joining us to talk about the safety issues like car insurance, among many other things, Tom.
So we're talking about this week because the bill that the legislature passed in lame duck is scheduled to go into effect around March 21.
Okay, real soon.
So what's happened before now is that companies like Uber and Lyft have been operating around the state, and there has been no state law whatsoever governing these companies.
Sure.
So the idea behind the bill that was passed in December was to set up one uniform set of rules that will apply to ride-sharing companies around the state and permit them to continue to engage in business around the state.
Sure.
And that's what was passed in lame duck. It's what's signed by the governor. It's what's going into effect. So now for the first time we're going to have a framework. Well, what's in the framework? Well, there's a lot of things. One of the most interesting things here is you've probably heard in other news stories that there's been legal debates around the country between drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft and the companies themselves as to whether they're drivers, or excuse me, whether they're employees or independent contractors.
Exactly.
Well, this bill that was passed in Michigan essentially codifies their status as independent contractors.
Okay.
It more or less says that if they're permitted to drive for whoever they want and on their own terms, on their own time, that they are an independent contractor. So that probably won't be an issue going forward in Michigan.
Okay.
Well, what about insurance?
Yeah.
This was the other thing that was completely unregulated. The amount of insurance that a ride-sharing company has to have is really going forward is going to be governed by what part of the trip this car was in. That is, did the accident, if there is one, did it occur during what they call a prearranged ride? So suppose you're the driver and I'm the passenger. Once I get into your car, once we've confirmed that we're going to ride together, that's a prearranged ride. Well, in that scenario, there has to be $1 million in liability coverage. But what if you're the driver and you're driving around town and you don't have a passenger that you're picking up?
I'm killing some time waiting for the next passenger, for example.
Right. The insurance level drops down to $50,000.
Okay.
So it's going to really turn on whether or not there's a prearranged ride in effect at the time of the accident. What about no-fault coverages? Well, there was confusion before about where do passengers go if they're injured in an Uber or a Lyft. This bill makes it clear that they go back to their own no-fault insurance company, even though they're in an Uber or a Lyft at the time of the accident. The bill then also goes on to impose some basic safety requirements for vehicle inspection and background checks for drivers.
Yeah.
They are not as robust as some other states have asked. For example, in Austin, Texas, there was a request that Uber and Lyft do fingerprint checks on their drivers to make sure that the person applying to drive was actually the person who was driving. We don't have that in Michigan. But they are required to do a criminal background check, a basic criminal background check. And if the drivers commit certain crimes or certain driving violations within a certain period of time, they can be excluded from ever driving for a ride-sharing company.
It's interesting stuff.
It is very interesting. We have a basic framework, but it's only a framework, and there's going to be questions that we have to address as time goes on.
Yeah, speaking of which, people want to reach out to you and learn more. How do they do that?
They can call us at 616-301-3333, or they can find us online at sinasdramis.com, or shoot us an email at info@sinasdramis.com.
Good stuff. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for having me.